Wilton Board of Education meeting to order. Has all board members had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second? Thank you, Lori. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Comments from the public. The board has set aside time at the beginning and end of regular meetings for public comments for members of the public to share their views on matters involving the Wilton Public Schools and to help inform the board's decisions on such matters. 2 minutes will be allotted to each speaker and a maximum of 15 minutes to any one subject. For the record, please also give your name and address. The board considers the views of citizens in its deliberations and welcomes and appreciates public comment. The board listens to public comment thoughtfully and with interest. The board, however, generally does not respond to public comment during board meetings by offering commentary or answering questions. The board also invites commentators and the public to contact the board or superintendent directly with any specific questions or comments. The board, through the chair and the superintendent, may respond to questions and comments offered during public comment or shared directly. And in responding, may also direct members of the public to the appropriate staff member for a response. Are there any comments from the public? Hearing none. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Thank you, Nicola. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Reports and recognition. Just a short note from me, although this is the last meeting of the school year, it's not going to be a quick one, so I'm not going to take too much time. As we come to the end of the school year, I'd like to take a minute of thanks. Thank you to our teachers, administrators, staff, students, parents, and caregivers, and the entire Wilton community. Education is a collective effort, and the dedication and commitment and hard work of the Wilton Collective is awe-inspiring. While this year brought challenges, our kids are learning and growing and thriving. The education system we have built and continue to grow and strengthen gives our children the tools to walk through any door. That gift of choice that is handed out with each diploma is priceless. And thank you to all who make it possible. June 15th is going to be incredible, and not just because of the sunny, lovely weather. On a more personal note, we welcome 3 new board members this year. I'd like to thank you for taking the job and doing the job. The work of a volunteer is never easy, neither is a school budget. It's been a true pleasure working together this year, so thank you. I wish everyone the summer break they want and deserve. Family, friends, rest, a good book. And I look forward to coming back around this table at the end of August and working together to deliver the gift of choice.
I've got no report. What's
Dive
more
in.
to say than that?
Yeah. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah, well said.
First item under review and discuss, elementary reading curriculum update, BOE district goal number 9.
Great, so we want to invite Chuck and Karen.
So we had our last meeting of the year of the ELA curriculum review meeting, and we came to some agreement moving forward with implementing the pilot of the new K-3 reading program. Please share that.
Thank you for having me back. Also, thank you for being patient while we got to our last committee meeting. I know I didn't have a lot of answers to your questions last time, but I can check out them tonight. So I sent you ahead of this evening a timeline for rolling the program forward. And if you look at that document, next school year, 2024-2025, we're looking to be in full implementation in grades 2 and 3. First grade will pilot in the 3rd trimester. They will try on 1 to 2 modules, depending on how much time allows. They take about 12 weeks, so I think it'll be 1+ modules. I'm not sure we'll get quite to the full 2. And then in kindergarten, as you know, they're piloting illustrative math next year, so they're off the grid. In 2025-2026, we will be in full implementation then in grade 1, and kindergarten in the last trimester will pilot 1 to 2 modules, and they will be in full can see some of the due dates have gone by. May 29th, we determined the scope of the pilot. The teachers for the pilot have been selected. We've procured the necessary resources for first grade, second grade, and third grade. And we are looking for volunteers now to help us prepare some lesson materials. We want our teachers' minds to be around designing tasks that foster cognitive engagement, not around cutting cards. So we'd like to have some of that card cutting done for them. And finally, the letter that goes out, that is scheduled to go out tomorrow after we talk with you guys, has been written and is ready to go, notifying families and kindergarten through fifth grade of this change and providing a tool to collect concerns and questions from the parent community, which will feed a FAQ document for us that will be able to continue to push out answers to questions, continue to collect questions, as well as post them on our website. So that is all ready to go, and that's as far as we are in the action plan. With regard to our grant, we did receive a $109,000 grant, and that grant has stretched through outfitting grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3 classrooms for full implementation. So kindergarten materials will come out of our operating budget as we move forward. Additional training beyond year 1 will also be included in our operating budget as we move forward. Questions?
I have a few, I don't know if any. So budget-wise for full implementation, but that's just for 1 year, correct? Or there are like materials that need to get
There are
repurchased?
consumable materials that need to be purchased. EL Education is giving us some of those gratis as we
Okay.
move forward. Not all, but some
Okay.
of them.
And so, when you say full implementation, it means like full pilot implementation, is that
Full pilot
implementation?
to the full grade level.
So full grade level,
All sections.
all sections?
Correct.
Okay.
In third grade and in second grade.
In third grade,
First grade, all sections with pilot 1 to 2 modules in the third trimester.
okay. And so, you feel confident that come September, like module 1 and hopefully 2, like those first 12 to 24 weeks will be set and ready
Yes,
to
we
go?
have training scheduled for the end of the school year, and of course, block people in August.
Okay,
And we do need some help with
right, so good. That's what I had circled on here, parent volunteers, but now I get what you want us to do. And then but basically when you talk about notifying families who will be subject to the pilot for grades 1 and 2, that'll be everybody, correct?
Grades 2.
I'm
and
sorry,
3.
grades 2 and 3, that'll be everybody.
Once Power School opens in August,
Mhm.
Parent Square communication will go out to all second and third grade parents,
Okay.
just reminding them and talking to them about the next learning opportunities for the adults.
Okay.
Ahead of first grade, the third trimester starts on March 15th. First grade's going to receive training on January 8th and February 12th. So
Okay.
after that second training, I'll send out Parent Square notification to all first grade parents.
Okay.
And collect their concerns and questions.
Okay, it's a lot,
So
yeah, it's a lot.
it's a lot, but we had a really great committee with a lot of really great minds who really broke this down into manageable steps, and coaches are hard at work unpacking materials, disseminating materials ahead of the June 12th training. The LLC staff has been really helping us with considering our asset management, and we're off to a good start.
I mean, I guess to some extent, the idea that I kind of like of doing the full grade pilot is then that all the teachers are there for each other. And so, in the sense that there's an ability to be cooperative and helpful, and then that for first grade lessons already learned in that, first half of the year, just will there be opportunities for like second and third grader teachers to work together, so we could have like that vertical
We're gonna have
integration?
two trainings that they are combined for, October 15th and November 5th. Second and third grade will work together
Yeah.
for that. It's a guided session with the staff developer, then working with them on unpacking and deepening their understanding of the skills in the all block as well as the module instruction.
And Cider Mill is now done with illustrative math? Is that pilot, or is that?
Fifth grade is piloting this year.
Okay, but the third grade teachers that are piloting the reading program are not also piloting IM?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not their first year.
Okay, it's not their first year. That's, I think, where.
What do you think the biggest challenges, or if you had any feedback from teachers, what are they most concerned about
The
moving
teachers
into
on the
this?
committee felt much the way Ruth did, and I support them in that there is a lot of comfort in moving through that as a tribe together and figuring things out together with the support of the coaches. I really think keeping enthusiasm and confidence high is the top priority for me right now. We have a lot of enthusiasm. I hope that the confidence continues to build as we move through our professional learning, and we'll be surveying our teachers after every session to see how that's going.
And what's the net impact on the budget for kind of, so how much are we paying currently each year for materials for Teachers College? What will we be paying for Imagine Learning? Do
Don't have
we
a
know?
But I'll go get those numbers for you. Can I email them to you?
My sense is it's not going to be a huge difference.
I don't, it will not be an increase. I wanna wait until I see the full price for the full year's worth of consumables before I give you the number. I wanna make sure you get the correct number,
Thanks, Karen.
but I'll get to you before next Friday.
The grant from the state offsetting some of the cost of these materials too.
Yeah.
The grant from the state outfitted all first grade classrooms, all second grade, third classrooms, all third grade classrooms for year one implementation, as well as all a year's worth of training for second and third grade, and 2 preliminary sessions for grade 1. So we got pretty far into our implementation rollout plan on
Yeah.
$109,000. We just have to outfit kindergarten classrooms and train first grade fully for a year alongside kindergarten.
So, I think the thing that I would ask from you all is to know that you have our support. So if October and November comes and it needs an extra push or an extra lift, or if there's something that is supportive that we can do, we definitely want to know what that is. Because if
We
the-
appreciate the offer.
Yeah.
I might take you up on it.
No, and this is a big,
It's a big
it's a big
change.
lift.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I want, every teacher who's making that lift to know that, we want them to be successful, and we also want to know if it's not doing what we want and hope to be, is that because of lack of resources, or is that because of something else? Yeah.
Not because of lack of resources or support. So
Right.
we've been very careful
And
ensuring
yeah.
that we have everything we need to keep enthusiasm and confidence.
Right, and so
But
that's,
we will definitely let you
yeah.
know if there's something that we will.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for your continued support of coaching, because I don't roll this out in
The
the timeframe
coaches,
that we
yeah.
were
Mm.
trying
They're
to
gonna
do.
be key to the success of this,
Yeah.
for sure.
And have they had extra training on this, or are they feeling fully supported in moving this
They
forward?
are going to have access to an unlimited better lessons coach, the 3 coaches who are coaching into the new program. They're gonna have their own coach on coaching into this program
Okay.
specifically.
Okay.
So I'm confident that they'll all support it.
Can you just talk for a minute about how you're going to evaluate the pilot?
So we want to look at both qualitative and quantitative data. So you can find that under progress monitoring, which is action step 4. So we will utilize the MAP assessment to monitor which standards students are and are not securing. We'll be using our DIBELS assessment to monitor the acquisition of their foundational skills. And we'll be looking at longitudinal data, if we're thinking over 3 years,
the longitudinal data, I presume there'll be like some signals that you'll be looking at through along the way, because 3 years, I mean, not to get personal, I have a second grader, you know, going into second grade, those 3 years, that's a long time in the learning span of our youngest learners.
So it wouldn't be 3 years on third grade, or it'll be, what did third grade look like for the 3 preceding?
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Okay. Okay.
Compared to
To-
this year's.
Okay.
And as we look at those 3 interim math assessments and look at additional growth percentiles over time, we'll have something to compare in fall, winter, and spring.
Okay. Thank you.
As well as SBET data.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that. I didn't realize that was on.
Well, maybe I didn't, have my listening ears. Any other?
I just wanted to say thank you. I know you've done a ton of work on this, and the sessions you had were highly professional, so thank you.
Thank you for being part of it.
Yeah, it was a great committee.
Yeah, Heather's got a question. Heather, go ahead.
Thank you. So I was just wondering, I know that, it's really tricky during the school day as part of that time, but I'm wondering, has there been a plan for teachers that are doing this pilot to have designated time to kind of do a brain dump, bi-weekly or whatever it may be, so they can figure out kind of what's working best? Is that going to be IEP time? Is that team time? Is there any extra time during the school day that they're going to be able to kind of in that immediate moment after they've taught a lesson or after they kind of run through a week of lessons to figure out what works and what doesn't?
Yeah, they will, through the course of our responsive coaching, they'll have time with their coaches, they'll have time collaboratively with their IETs, and there's also time sheltered on professional learning days while they're engaged with EL education and Imagine Learning. We're sheltering most of the day so they can work collaboratively together and deepen that work along with their coach. So we are looking for those opportunities as well, Heather, and we've already staked out some.
Okay, great.
Then we wish you well as the work commence over the summer, because some continue, some have off and some continue to work, summer days and the summer work. And so look forward to helping and supporting and hopefully this being a successful endeavor.
Yeah. You've thought it through very carefully, so I think you have a really good plan, and you've really done all the sort of conceptual work. It should go all right, but if it doesn't, you should let us know so we can help you, because it's just so.
Very much a collective view, just to be clear. There were 22 members on that committee.
Yes.
Thinking,
Yep.
and it is all evident in everything that I shared.
Yep. Very thoughtful.
Great.
Middlebrook schedule.
Great. So we have Jory, and then one of our amazing math teachers, Michael Collins, is here. And so we've had, as the board is aware, some very lengthy conversations over the course of the spring with the WA, with staff in that building, and we've come to an agreement on a different schedule model, and these guys are just going to take you through the high points. Welcome.
Sorry for
First
the-
board meeting for you?
No, actually, I think I've been to a couple.
Great. Welcome
Thanks
back.
for having me back, appreciate it.
This is kind of weird.
I know, this is weird.
Well, we did it. So Michael Collins is one of our leaders. He's a teacher for 6 Heading. He's also a leader in the WA and that in our building. So he's a great partner in everything that we talked about with the schedule. As Kevin talked about with the really the discussions and trying to really make sure that we're meeting all the needs of everybody involved, most specifically and most importantly for students. But then secondarily, how can we help teachers make it more manageable?
positive.
Very happy about that. And other than that, really the easiest way to describe it to you is that the academic classes of ELA, math, social studies, science, and world language are 48-minute periods, and they'll meet every day. So instead of meeting 4 days out of 5, they're going to meet every day. We're going to still do a rotation because that was one of the things that I would think staff and students alike all liked. That I'll pick on math again. Math didn't always meet at the same time every day, and it rotated throughout the day. And for anybody who's been in the classroom, you get a different child in front of you at 8:30 than you do after lunch. So just that opportunity to meet at a different time is still going to continue. But also without that drop, being able to have a certain level of continuity of service for the teachers and for the kids. Is there anything else you wanted to highlight? I mean, you talked to the staff as a
I did. We had an informal meeting after school yesterday where we gathered all the teachers and we asked for their feedback. They had had time to see the new schedule, see some of the elements of the schedule, and that meeting was overwhelmingly positive. Folks were very excited to have the classes back every day. That was something that we really felt the loss of, especially as we think of the continuity of the learning in a class like math or world language. That drop, while on paper it seemed like a great idea, we really felt that loss in the day-to-day living of the schedule. The staff was also very appreciative of the 45-minute lunch, just any extra little pockets of time that folks can have to get the business of the day done, whether it's phone calls, catching up on email, running to the copier to get something ready for the next period. Folks are very excited about that 45 minutes. So I am glad to report, and I'm happy to report that we have a very happy staff that's excited about this proposal and ready to move forward on it. And I certainly do appreciate the partnership, Dr. Smith, Jory, our building leadership, and really coming together and talking this through and thinking about what can we do to make this the best possible schedule for the kids. I think it was a really great discussion we've had over the last few weeks, and I certainly appreciate it, and thank you guys for it.
So I think sort of next steps for us is going to be make sure that we are taking the time to evaluate this. How's it going? How's it working? Not only from a standpoint of what's the student performance like, but also getting more specific feedback from staff, from parents, from even the students. What's working, what isn't, what we need to fix or adjust or anything like that. So I think that's going to be an important part of our next step. I had expressed before about just a word we're trying to get to that 60 minutes, and we thought it was a good thing, and we want to back away from that. But I do think that based on the feedback the staff have given, that they feel really confident, very confident that they're going to be able to deliver the curriculum and do it very well in that time, in 48 minutes. And the bonus of having them meet every day is going to be that really that trade-off. Fair.
Absolutely, and you also have the opportunity now. We've been able to teach 4 lessons a week under the current model, and in the new model, we'll be able to go back to teaching 5 lessons a week, which we think will, in the long run,
Better.
it's going to help us
Yeah.
with our pacing.
It is a significant increase for our stride teachers in terms of minutes teaching, but the reaction that I've heard from each one of them is very positive. Probably from Chef Frank the most. He actually baked something. All kidding aside, but they are just looking forward.
I promise you, those 8 minutes are critical.
Heather's online. Yeah.
Thank you, Heather.
Right. So so Mike, when we met last about this, you talked about your own experience, and you felt like 60 was, just a bit too much. 42, the old schedule, was definitely not enough. You think 48 is like a sweet spot. So can you just talk about that, also inside the instructional framework that IM presents?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we were excited for in the 60-minute schedule was that it's fewer transitions. We thought it's going to slow down the pace of the day. It's going to kind of ground and center the kids. And one of the things that we kind of noticed in the classrooms was, while we didn't have that formal transition at 42 minutes for the kids to move to the next activity, around that 45, 50-minute mark, we started noticing kids on the whole starting to take that transition on their own behalf. And you started seeing things like bathroom trips and water breaks and I need to take a quick walk. So I think that 48 minutes is really going to be that kind of magic bullet in terms of the time that we need. As we kind of reopen these discussions as a math teacher, I said, we can't go back to 42 minutes because, especially for math, we just couldn't get it done in terms of our framework. You know, the different invitations to the math, getting into that synthesis at the end of the lesson, you just can't do that in those 42 minutes. So we were really thoughtful about this proposal in the 48 minutes, and we talked to all the team math teachers, and we said, if we were to go with something like this, do you feel confident that we're going to be able to cover this from warm up to synthesis to cool down to touch base with kids at the end of the period? And the teachers were overwhelmingly positive again that yes, they did feel that they were going to be able to get it done in a way that it's going to stick and retain with the kids.
Appreciate that.
So in IM, is there like a book with 181 math lessons to teach in a year? How does it work?
So
in IM?
our 6th grade curriculum has, 6th grade is unique in that it has the most mathematics standards in it. So our curriculum, I believe, is around 160 different lessons. Over the years, working with Trudy and Julie, our coach, we've been able to tweak some lessons here and there. You know, I think specifically about our dividing fractions unit, and even the IM consultants kind of agree that that unit in particular was one that was sort of overwritten. So we've been able to, over the years, kind of fine-tune, revise, condense some lessons, omit some lessons. And as we do that, we've always been very thoughtful about student performance. So that's actually one of the units where we historically, every year, give the FIAD assessment through the ESPA portal to kind of just make sure that the learning is actually sticking and they're retaining it. And I'm happy to report, like this year in particular, you know, we usually hovered on that FIAB at usually like 85% students at or above benchmark, and this year students were at 94% at or above benchmark for that lesson. So I just offer that as an example of, while we do have 160 lessons or so, we've been able to kind of condense and tweak over the years so that students are still getting the crux of that problem-based curriculum, but we don't have to cover every single lesson. And I anticipate that that's going to be work we continue to do going into the new year, just making those fine-tuning adjustments as we work through that instruction.
Do you have feedback from the language arts folks?
So we were able to talk to, I believe, 7 or 8 of the teachers. There were a couple folks we weren't able to talk to just because of different lead situations, but again, they were also very confident that in that time frame, they're going to be able to meet what they need to get done within their instructional frameworks. A lot of them just cited, again, it's that consistency of being able to see the classes every day and having to build on that. And it's, you know, not to keep talking math, but it's something I really did feel that, you know, the day after that drop, there is time that you have to reprime that pump. It's like, remember not yesterday, but the day before when we were in the middle of that discovery and we started getting at this idea, you know, there's that kind of re-entry into it that wasn't happening when you have the class day after day after day.
Well, good for you for looking at it and tweaking it and looking at what worked and what didn't work and trying to, you know, finesse it so that it does a better job for all of you, the kids, and for all of you to be able to teach. I thought we came to the 60 minutes because the math needed the 60 minutes. And that's kind of, you know, you spent a year, you know, trying to make this all work. So good for you for, you know, figuring it out again and tweaking it and making it something that's viable for all of you and the kids. 60 minutes is a long time for a kid to sit, I think.
I have a little bit of the opposite of that. I have some, you know, big reservations, you know, not, you know, just concerns that, you know, I think going down, when I was in 42, 43-minute classes, there were teachers with timers, and they were pacing themselves, and it was rushed. And felt that the curriculum wasn't able to be gotten through the way it was supposed to be gotten through. And so now it's kind of 6 more minutes of that, and you're talking 5 lessons instead of 4 lessons, but it's still the 240 minutes. I think there's a loss of, you know, we talked about having that extra time for personal learning, for small group work, for individual, for guided instruction and guided practice. You know, the kids did really well, you said, on the FIB that you looked at this year, but that was under the 60 minutes. So I just, So I have some, reservations about, did we really go through this, and come to this, with data and clarity? Because I think it's a little bit more than a tweak. Because it's a 60-minute lesson plan now going back to a 48-minute lesson plan. It takes reworking. There's still the transition, part of it. And I just worry about ELA. I worry about how it was 2 blocks, and then it was 1 block of 60 minutes, and now it's down to 1 block of 48 minutes. And just concern about being able to really live in the material. And I completely, you say it's going to, you can do it, and I just, okay, but like, we need to see it, because this was a strong performance year. And, correlation is,
Yeah, that's
not
true.
causation, but it was a strong performance year. And so I just, I come to it with reservations, and I don't want to, not lay them out.
Yeah, I don't think any of the staff has seen, so we have preliminary SBA results, and, the middle school's been on an upward trajectory for a long time, particularly in math. Since the introduction of the SBA, this year, Middlebrook will have the strongest performance it's ever had, across the board, which is amazing. And so thinking forward, we certainly want to make sure that as many kids as possible are meeting standards. And so we'll have to, as we think about the work with the coordinator and looking at the curriculum, particularly in Yale, just because of the change in the time structure, we'll have to lean into the other content areas too, science and social studies, as they always support reading and writing as well as math, just to ensure that you're able to do what you need to do in that time period, but also be open about what, no schedule is ever going to be perfect, and so I think an honest evaluation of what works and what doesn't will help as we continue to look at it going forward. And congratulations, by the way, the achievement it's never been better.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really
Pretty
true.
great.
Proud of what the kids did this year.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yep.
How, in an average weather, and let me know if it would be different when it's 42, 48, or 60 minutes, how many minutes do you feel like are not teaching time, where there's distractions in the classroom, kids getting up and down, or things like that? Like, how much net teaching time do you feel like you need to deliver the curriculum on a daily basis?
That's a hard question to answer. I will offer that the illustrative math lessons themselves are written for usually around 45 minutes, and that includes everything from warm-up to getting that synthesis finished, getting the cool down done, checked, assessed, touched base on. There are some lessons that are different. Some lessons may be written with only 30 minutes of activities. So there is a great deal of variability there. I will say experience tells me that in 6th grade at least, the first unit where we spend a lot of time with surface area volume, our geometry unit, that's the unit where we would typically historically get bogged down with the 42-minute periods. Because, speaking to my colleagues in my IET every year, was if only we had 3 or 4 minutes, we could have properly wrapped this lesson up in a way where the kids really got it. It was synthesized, we're sending them out the door, and they know kind of with a good understanding of what the concepts in the material were. And that's where I think our pacing ultimately was impacted, because over the years we had to be, well, we didn't fully synthesize this lesson, so we got to start again tomorrow, bring this back up, and that's where we would lose a lot of the time. So I really do believe that 48-minute is going to be a sweet spot for us. And that being said, of course, we're going to monitor, watch. I imagine we're going to be in ongoing conversations with not just math, but all the other disciplines across the building, having conversations about what's the data showing us. We've got our weekly review sheets in math. We've got great assessments that we've fine-tuned and revised over the years that we can look back on historically and say, how are they comparing this year based on what we saw last year and the year before that? So we will be engaged in that kind of ongoing conversation throughout the year so that we can ultimately make any further tweaks or adjustments we may need to.
I'm reminded of Dr. Marie Alcock's advice to us when we first started our whole scheduling examination and planning and thinking. And she said, stop counting minutes and start counting what you're doing with the minutes. And she was very clear about that being the priority over if you're going to steal 2 minutes here, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, you're looking at the wrong thing. And it stuck with me as we were talking about this. And there is certainly a lot to be said for an incredibly efficient and professional staff that we have at Meadowbrook that are committed to making this work and committing to getting it right. And they have, as you just pointed out, Kevin, for the last few years, proven that right trajectory. And this schedule, based on everything we've talked about throughout the weeks, is something that they've been clamoring for and saying, hey, make our life a little bit more manageable. And I believe that does that. And that is, I think, reason enough for us to say it is worth giving it a very fair shot with the caveat of there's an expectation, and that expectation is very high in terms of covering the curriculum and the performance matching that, what they've been doing. And I have faith in the staff to do that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
It's extraordinary. They really are always
Yeah.
working to try to get it right.
Yep.
Really passionate about doing that.
No, and I don't want to I'm not
I don't think
questioning
you-
the staff's, provision. I'm just, what are the tools and the structures that we're putting around, that staff and, what works, what, as no schedule being perfect, what are the ultimate outcomes that we're looking for from the policy that, we put forward.
Maybe this will be the perfect schedule.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know, six to eighth graders and 45 minutes of lunch. It's a little.
That's the one I'm worried about.
So I just, and that you have the resources that you can, that you can manage, that. And were strides always historically 40 minutes?
Since I've been at Meadowbrook,
So-
no, but it's varied around that,
Okay.
about that time.
Okay.
We've been as low as 35, 37 minutes, as high as 41 or so minutes.
Okay.
So it's been
In that
general
range.
vicinity, but.
The good thing is the consistency of the 5 days. That's really great.
I think it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah,
again, to
I
just
agree.
be able to see them every day and have those touch points every day, and not even to mention the fact that we're going to be able to pick up, an extra lesson per week, especially in the math. I think that's going to help us out in the long run as well.
Yeah, you think about it, if you didn't happen to not have that class on a Friday and then Monday's a holiday,
Yeah.
you go 4 full days if
Yep.
not.
Yep.
That's, I'm sure.
And that was one of the things that the staff really did feel as we went through this over the course of this year.
Right, well,
Okay.
let's
Thanks
do
for
it.
this
Let's,
conversation.
make
Thank you.
make it work.
Meadowbrook schedule.
We've talked about it for a long time.
I think that's, the conversation's gonna,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Both.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Cell phone committee update.
Great, so just, it's not much of an update. So the committee's going to have its first meeting on Tuesday. And, what I'm anticipating, just given the feedback since our last meeting, is that the strong majority of folks, internally, externally here in the community, are really interested in pursuing a cell phone ban. So I think we're just going to take the temperature immediately, and I'm assuming that people are going like, it's not a question of if, it's a question of how, and then we'll just use that time together to really look at logistics and map out. And there are a lot of considerations that we need to walk through as we just continue to consider it, and then set up some actual timelines. So that's what that first meeting will do next Tuesday, and then we'll continue to make our plans in the summer, and then we'll come back to it in the fall. And by the time our fall first board meeting, but it'll be the end of the summer, not the fall, just to be accurate. I'll have an actual plan for you.
Who's on the committee?
It is a long list of folks. We have actually quite a strong group of teachers from Middlebrook. There was a lot of interest across the staff, so I've the largest number. A bunch of district administrators. I've got a few parents who are participating. I invited both Chandra Ring, kind of in her role, she's a parent obviously, but also representative of the Wilton Youth Council. We've been talking, at the Youth Council about cell phones and social media for years. Vanessa Elias, another kind of parent here in the community, but also advocate, has been doing her own research. So I don't think she's able to attend, but she's volunteered to help in whatever way we can.
Are there any students?
I don't have students yet, and I haven't reached out to them. So, but we will figure that out. Yeah. It's a great question.
Anecdotally, when I've talked to people in the community, and I'm overexposed to younger families, given my kid's age, yeah, overwhelming support
Yeah.
is probably an understatement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially for like my kid's age, they're still years away from normally having a phone. So the idea of getting ahead of it before certain kids it's even in their realm was very attractive.
Yeah.
And
Even the kids I talked to last night I was at a meeting where the kids were there, and they all thought it was, and these were high school kids, and they all thought it was a good idea.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, again, I don't know how you generalize across an entire student body, because I think you're going to get the range of reactions.
Of course.
But it was in the feedback from the pilot at the high school. They had a day, a no tech day. And, one of the themes that came through from the student survey was that they appreciated being disconnected. And, part of the rationale that some of the kids wrote about was a desire to interact more in person, and so at some level, many kids recognize, that their smartphones can be a burden.
Yeah.
So again, I anticipate we'll get the full range of reaction. I think the other really important piece here, and we can talk more about this too as we come into the fall, certainly be talking out here with the administrative team, is setting up and supporting our parents and really doing a different kind of campaign with parents of younger kids. You guys you're coming into that age where kids are given smartphones, and so I think doing things differently to arm parents about the information and even just raise questions. I go back to I talked about it when last we were discussing this concept of having a relationship with your device, right, and really framing that for parents that way, and giving them a tool to help them think through some of those questions, right? I mean, your kiddos are really little, so at some point, maybe you've got a year or two where you ask, with your wife, like, all right, so when are we going to do this and why, and what are the concerns, and I don't know that all kinds of parents really do that pre-work before they get the device, because it's like your kid shows up, it's like, give me a device now, my friends all have one and I need one, and so you're backed into a corner a little bit as a parent. So if we can help them be more proactive and more thoughtful, I think that will also serve kids, and then I think for parents of kids who are older, just trying to create a stronger community around the delay idea, and help give parents some cover.
Kevin, I think too it would be interesting, separately parents and students, to survey somehow and understand like what are the biggest concerns about doing it, to then be able to get ahead of addressing the concerns. Like the one that's come up the most when I've talked about is just safety.
Sure.
Right.
So, people want to know, God forbid something happens, how do they communicate with their child? How can someone communicate externally? And so just being able to
Yeah.
allay people's concerns
They
or
need access to their
understand,
kids,
explain,
for
yeah,
sure.
this is what would happen, like getting ahead of that I think would be
Yeah,
very
it's
helpful.
it's a great point. That all of the reading I've done where other communities, other school districts have adopted, these kind of no phone policies, that is absolutely the number one, question that's raised across the board. So that's it.
Okay.
Wilton Continuing Education End-of-Year Report.
Okay, so in a typical year, we have Dolores here, but I gave her the night off just because we had a rich agenda tonight. But I'll just, you have the report. Continuing Ed has had another really stellar year. Dolores and her staff are amazing. They provide, an incredible array of opportunities to both kids and adults across this community. One of my favorite updates that she also always provides is her top 5 for adult ed. No surprise, pickleball is the number 1.
Number
That's
2,
all the
number
rage,
3.
yeah. And so, card games, pottery, knitting, baking, all, really attractive activities for the folks participating in Continuing Ed this year. You can read that at your leisure, but just know that, that's a program that is tremendously successful, and we have a lot of confidence in Dolores and her staff.
Oh, I will go back through it, thank you.
Oh, you skipped right
Yeah,
over
I
the
skipped
the
over
big
the
one.
big one,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. It was maybe my 46-year-old eyes need an eye doctor appointment. Thank you, Dolores, for putting that together for us. And so, review and discuss the Middlebrook and Wilton High School Draft Student Code of Conduct.
Great. So as we've been talking across many months here, we're, philosophically, I think as a district, as we encounter really concerning student behavior across the board, and some really, profoundly challenging behavior, we're trying to reorient ourselves much more explicitly in, what's been described as a, high support, high accountability paradigm. A couple of months ago, I asked our secondary school administrators to go back around and to look at their handbooks. We pulled a couple of models from other school districts who were considering similar changes, and I asked them to develop really explicit codes of conduct. The high school's had a fairly explicit code of conduct for a long time, so this one builds off what they have. The middle school has pretty dramatically expanded theirs. And so what we're aiming to do here is to give kids, to give their parents, to give our staff, to give ourselves a really explicit guide. So when students have those unfortunate moments when they misbehave, we have a clear set of parameters about how we'll respond. And so what you can see in terms of format, there are kind of categorical types of infractions, and then there are specific examples, and then corresponding to those specific examples, you have first offense, subsequent offense, and then how the school is going to respond. And so in all of these things, there is a ladder of discipline that speaks to the gravity or the severity of the offense, and there's also a restorative piece. So, connecting back to some of the changes in the anti-bullying legislation, the new statute really calls all districts to think more sharply about restorative activities to help kids recognize their behavior and recover from it, and to help the school district move along as well. And so we've built out first drafts that capture some of that. I think as we look at this, there'll be responses in here that make a lot of sense, and as we begin to walk through it, I imagine as we do every year, things will come up and we'll need to adjust. The piece on restoration, that's the piece that will really need to be developed over time more thoroughly. Certainly working with Kim and some of our school counselors and others, either within the schools or here in the community, we'll be able to build that out over time. But I will say, as a first draft, I'm really pleased with what our administrators put together. They did this during the busiest time of the year, when they've been busy managing a lot of student misbehavior. So this will become part of the handbooks that will go out to families. We're tomorrow we're meeting, we're gonna talk about how do we wanna disseminate it. You know, it'll certainly be available electronically, but do we wanna take the opportunity to run paper copies for everybody and send them home, just to reinforce the idea that, you know, this is new, it's a change, we're serious about it, and then, you know, have the paper acknowledgement come back to us. So that we'll talk about that as a group tomorrow and make that decision. But this will be live for the next school year.
Kevin, I forget if you shared this in previous discussions on this broader topic. Do we have data about how many of these different type of offenses are happening today? Like, how much of that played into how we made changes, or?
Yeah, we don't, I mean, we do. We collect data for, you know, anything that would be, you know, where could be detained or be, you know, suspended either in school or out of school. And so they, you know, they run the gamut. You know, again, we're not overwhelmed here, but, you know, it's ratcheted up. And so I think, you know, what you see here came out of past practice, came out of recent experience here in the district,
Right.
Came, you know, after looking at models, and then, you know, our building administrators, they live in it. So, you know, I can't say that the whole, you know, the data that we keep in Power School and did any kind of analysis there, but, you know, again, I would rely on their judgment because they live it every single day.
Is
Yeah.
there-
Sorry, no, go ahead.
No,
Go.
finish.
What I was really trying to get at was the change. Were there an acute set of behaviors that we were noticing trending up? Obviously, we heard about some during our community discussion, but what I'm really trying to figure out is, do we say, hey, there was a specific set of behaviors we continually saw, and we realized that the restoration, the consequences weren't strong enough, and we're beefing up now?
Yeah, so
in
that's
effort.
it's a great question. I think that, you know, categorically, and, you know, you guys, if you have something different, just, you know, jump in here. But categorically, online, off-campus mean behavior, that's been a sea change in the last couple of years. Knowing that, you know, we in part need to reset the environment a little bit, and so trying to think, you know, we don't want to be overly punitive, but we want kids to know that there are consequences. And one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten for a very long time is that because they don't necessarily see it, you know, oftentimes kids will develop a perception that, you know, we're either soft on crime or,
Right.
you know, there aren't consequences. So,
Yep.
you know, I think, you know, the other just, you know, broad trend is, you know, some of the recent uptick in hate behavior. You know, we've needed to come back and think about that, and just, you know, are we sending strong enough messages? And so those would be, you know, I think the two broad buckets of behaviors. And I guess, you know, the last piece about wanting to be explicit, you know, this is really in part an effort to help, you know, help our kids, but our families see that, you know, when kids do misbehave, there are responses. And, you know, we talked about a month or so ago the challenge that we as school administrators have around sharing information, because we're obligated to rightly protect student privacy. And so you sometimes have to kind of jump through hoops to try to explain to people, like, I can't really tell you what happened, but let me paint a picture for you. And so having a code of conduct that, you know, any parent or community member or kid can look up and see, you know, I would expect would help that understanding that there are consequences for types of behavior.
Got it. Thank you.
It's
Was
great
there-
that we
oh,
have, sorry, no, go
No,
ahead.
no. I just wanted to ask if there was an effort to standardize the consequence between the two schools? Is there any value in that, or?
I think there are certainly developmental considerations, you know, as you run across the secondary grades. So, you know, part of the work, you know, we're going to look at this a little bit tomorrow, and then over the summer we're going to come back to it. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, administrators also have discretion, right? And we
Right.
have to rely on their professional judgment. And so I would expect that as we, you know, live through a year and we're looking at this, we're probably going to make some modifications. And, you know, the secondary administrators, like the primary administrators, spend an awful lot of time already talking and calibrating. And so, this will give us another tool to do that. And I would just say, there might be some things embedded in here. Nothing jumped out at me, but there may be some things that are a little wonky, because it's a first draft.
Different days, different penalties on days, if that.
Yeah, right. And some of it, again, some of it, it can look arbitrary, because it's, these things are all multi-factor.
Of course. Thank you.
This is a great document. Are we relying on every student and parent to read it, or will there be some kind of presentation to the students so that it's not just a document that their eyes glaze over and they don't actually take it in?
Yeah, it's another great question, and that's something I've got that on my to-do list to talk through with the administrators. I think again, big picture, there are some things that we need to do a little bit differently just to reset ourselves and help reset the cultural behavioral expectations in our schools. And so one of the proposals I'm going to make to all of our team, and they do this in different ways anyway, ritually, but to take some time at the start of a school year and to meet with kids directly and not walk through the entire code, but pick some of the high points and just paint a picture for kids. And then we do the same thing with parents. That's just relatedly, as we were just discussing with the Middlebrook schedule, time is our most scarce and most valuable resource. And so we make a lot of choices to privilege certain activities. And over the years, as you've all probably experienced, when we bring parents in for back to school nights and things like that, we often, don't, hamstring you with lengthy principal presentations because we want you to meet the teachers, we want you to hear about the classrooms, that's where the work is. We need to reclaim some of that time, not a lot of it, but some of it to reinforce the most important messages that we think our parents and families need to hear. And one of those messages is around, expectations. And so that's something, again, we'll pick up tomorrow, and then when the team meets later this summer, we'll get into that more concretely and really map out, what that's going to look like.
Kevin, is there an opportunity to integrate any of that into the portrait of a graduate?
In what way? I mean, you have, socially responsible, active citizen. The categories are pretty broad. So, it's an expectation, that students, comport themselves appropriately.
Yeah.
And it's okay when kids make mistakes too,
Yeah.
right? It's great that they do it with us and not when, they're adults later in life and they haven't learned those lessons. So, I don't know. I think we have to remember too, right? We're a learning environment, and we want kids to make mistakes because we want them to have the benefit of the lessons.
I think this goes a long way of saying, as we're a high-performing, high-achieving district, and we value that, we also value this. In the same way that we lay out like curriculum and standards and have an understanding of what we expect, that we also have standards and understandings of, around culture and behavior. And so I think that this goes a long way to, I think, showing especially kids the seriousness of it within it, just with this within itself. For what it's worth, I'm old-fashioned. I like if you go home with a booklet and come back with a piece of paper saying that it's signed. I don't have any data to say that that's a meaningful enterprise. I just think of it. It then requires an interaction between child and parent, where if you say, click on this online or look at it, the child and the parent don't necessarily have to be there exchanging something at the same time. So I think that there is something to that. And I think that, for a first draft, this is tremendously thoughtful. I'd like, I don't know if there's been legal eyes on it or if there needs to be. I don't know. I'm just raising it as But I think that, it's a good thing to have it in black and white.
Yeah. I'd ask Barbara and Jory or Brian, is there anything you would add, as you're just hearing the conversation unfold? As the authors.
I thought you gave a good summary, Dr. Smith. Yep.
And I would just reinforce that message about the amount of time we take based on activities and meetings that are happening outside of school. That is just, I would take us enough time, and the last point about families really wanting to know and believe that there is some level of follow-up, or that what are you doing, and having a document like this where you can point to and say,
Yeah.
you can take a look at that, and you'll have a pretty good idea of how we follow that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm optimistic that it's gonna afford us an opportunity to say, we need to know, here it is.
I have one last question, if I may. It's a high school related question. Some of the offences include like suspension from attendance. I'm thinking of any infraction, you're not on the sports team anymore. It's hinted at in some of the transgressions, but it's not in all of them.
Well, I would tell you this, like right now with drug and alcohol things, it is an automatic 14-day suspension. And then if a student is suspended on that day or given days, they're not allowed to participate. That's what we have right now. What you have in front of you is definitely a draft that we're gonna have further conversations about. But that's essentially where we are right now. And we're pretty much in accordance with other schools, how they handle that with athletics, and not just athletics, but extracurricular and co-curricular activities.
And I would add that we also have an athletic code of conduct that we also have to follow, so that kind of, this is a larger umbrella and then fits in. So paying, giving some honor to what's already in that and having it fit into this, I think is part of that reason as well.
Great. Any other questions, comments about this?
I'm hopeful that there'll also maybe be some state guidance along with the new legislation or the regulations that come out on some of the, restoration opportunities and activities.
There's always hope.
There's always hope.
Yeah.
There's use of cell phone during class, but I know not maybe at Middlebrook and at the high school, it's not just cell phones detracting from the learning, it's also just flipping onto YouTube while the teacher's I'm not really paying attention to the teacher right now, I'm doing something on a website I'm not supposed to be on. Will there be any consequences for that?
Well, I'll just share that what gets lost in a document like this sometimes is really what we're trying to do. We're trying to teach responsible use of these devices. So if it always feels like it's like, where are you, we're gonna get on you, I don't know if that's the message we want to deliver as much as it's we're trying to teach you responsible use. So I had a child come up to me in the middle of the cafeteria and say, can I text my mom? You know, and at least in that moment, recognizing that she knows she's not supposed to have a phone, knows that she's want to plan some sort of social engagement this afternoon, but recognize she didn't want to make it look like she was doing something improper. And for the most part, our kids are pretty good about that. They really are. So I'm not as concerned about that one little piece, but are the kids that are going to try that? Yeah, I'm sure they are.
And speaking on behalf of our teachers, that's a significant distraction that you're bringing up. We tell them we have the cell phone caddies and have students put them away, which I think we do relatively consistently. I think we can do that better. But as you all know, working with teenagers, they are very, very adept, very quick, and at these fleeting moments where, like you said, they can switch on something when they have a device in front of them. It's very difficult, and the teachers talk about the difficulty of managing that environment. I think that's certainly part of the catalyst of why we're saying, do we want to continue to have cell phones, accessible in our schools, which is a broader conversation.
Any other questions or thoughts on this? Okay. Thank you. I know that was a lot of work.
Ton
So
of work,
it's
a
appreciated.
ton.
Yes. Under possible action items, we have a briefing summary on open choice.
Great, so I sent you a recommendation as part of your packet to open up to 5 seats in this coming kindergarten to Norwalk students who participate in Project Open Choice. This year was our first year of participation in the Open Choice program. By all accounts, it's been very successful. We presently enroll 4 Open Choice students. We anticipate that they'll return. Next year, those students, 3 will be in grade 1 and 1 will be in grade 2. We expect our kindergarten enrollment to be around 222. If we enrolled an additional 5, that total cohort would be 227. We'll have 13 sections of kindergarten, so average class sizes will be in the 17 to 18 range. As I wrote to you, the cost of adding additional students is marginal. The actual cost of adding an open choice student is not the per pupil average. The CSDE, as you know, provides a grant of $3,000 to districts per open choice student. The transportation is provided by the RESC. In our case, it's CES at no cost to the receiving district. And then, should an added district student require special education or related services, the sending district shall pay the amount equal to the difference between the cost of the services and the grant paid by the SDE. So I'm asking for a motion to approve the recommendation to open a maximum of 5 kindergarten seats to Norwalk students participating in Project Open Choice.
Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to open a maximum of 5 kindergarten seats to Norwalk students participating in open choice?
I so move.
Thank you, Pam. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Nicola. Any discussion, questions?
Kevin, how does with a maximum of 5, is there already, remind me what the applicant pool?
Right, so a couple of things. So any student in the Norwalk Public Schools
Right.
is eligible to participate. They have to fill out an application, and then there is a weighted lottery. The purpose of the program is to reduce racial, ethnic, and economic isolation.
Yep.
And so the lottery is very heavily weighted to poor and minority students. That's what the population we're trying to serve. So CES, the RESC in our region, facilitates that process. And we opened 5 seats last year. We got 4 kids. And so I say a maximum of 5. And we may get 5, we may get fewer. Norwalk students also have the opportunity to participate in open choice in Westport and Weston.
Right.
Any other questions or discussion? Move to call the question. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. And discuss and approve the 24-25 BOE meeting calendar.
So you've had it. I think we made the changes that you requested. And even though you approve it, we can always make a change again if we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it does spread out the workshops for budget season and
Yep.
Moves
Thank
them
you.
to the
Thank you
evening.
for
And
that. Yep.
goes. Is there
Wasn't there
a,
a big gap? Didn't we have a big gap when we weren't meeting? Or was that?
yeah, so that's that's now
that cleaned-
taken care of, yeah. Is there a motion to approve the 24-25 BOE calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Lori. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Pat. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous. Discuss and approve the Wilton High School Summer 2025 Costa Rica trip.
Great. So I don't know. So a couple of you saw when Matt Hoyt came last fall. You guys weren't on the board yet, but for a number of years, a couple of the high school science teachers have arranged a trip to Costa Rica. They've gotten anywhere from I think 8 to 12 kids, and they go and have nothing short of a transformative life experience. So you have the information, they're busy planning for the next summer. They're asking for approval now because they want to put the information in front of parents and begin to fundraise to help offset the costs. So this is a trip that we've supported in the past. It's amazing, and I strongly encourage you to support it going forward.
So this is for the 2025 summer, right?
Next summer, yeah.
And do we financially support this at all?
No.
I think we should go.
Yeah.
Plenty of time to fundraise.
No, it's a tremendous opportunity, and
Yeah.
every fall when the kids come back and tell us about it, it's always pretty incredible. So, is there a motion to approve the Wilton High School Summer 2025 Costa Rica trip?
So moved.
Thank you, Nicola. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pam. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously. Under future business, we have canceled the June 20th regular meeting. May you all find yourself doing something that makes you happy. And then just board briefing on the WPS 2024-25 district calendar.
Do you want some comments on that? Because we got just about the calendar. So we set the calendars, pretty far in advance. We've had a practice of drafting calendars, sending them to the WA for feedback. That we unintentionally got away from that practice, kind of coming out of COVID, so we're kind of revisiting that. But with this particular calendar, next year, our April break is out of sync with a number of districts in Fairfield County. And so part of the reason for that is we just set our calendar, pretty far in advance comparatively. There's benefits and drawbacks. One of the challenges for our staff who live in other districts, if the weeks are out of sync, then, they run into some childcare issues or some vacation issues. So there was actually, I think a couple of staff members at Cider Mill that flagged this for us a number of weeks ago. So we took the opportunity just to collect some feedback through a survey. We had somewhere around 900 responses. The majority, about 60%, would have preferred a change. But as we were looking through all of that feedback, we also heard from a number of people who had already laid out funds for non-refundable vacations. And so I think, for that reason, I just can't recommend we make a change. It's really not fair. People, we adopted the calendar. It's been up for months. We'll have to work with, our staff and try to support them as best we can in the next April break. And then I think going forward, the other change that we'll make, just in addition to going back to the practice of making sure folks at the WA get to look at the calendar, we'll delay approval just so we can, look at what's going on in some other districts. I will say historically, this does happen from time to time, where you just get out of sync. There is no regional calendar requirement. There was a while ago, and everybody hated that because districts do like to have discretion to make their own choices. I certainly do because there are local considerations in every community, and so I wouldn't recommend that. And whenever we've looked at calibrating, most calendars are fairly routine, and most things line up, but not always. And so as I was going back to look at this, I noted in this year, while there are a lot of Fairfield County districts that happen to line up in their April break, Trumbull and Shelton didn't. And then if you were to go back and look another year, there would be a year where we were out of sync or somebody else was, and so there's just no way, that we should try to, capture everybody. But this, this is going to impact some of our teachers in April. We just need to be aware of that, and then we'll just try to, fix it going forward to the extent that we can.
Any other
It
comments?
is hard for the staff, that don't live in Wilton, and then their kids, it's tricky for them, for sure.
Yeah, been there, done that. So
Yeah, I bet
there
you
was a
have.
time when I didn't live in Wilton, and our schedules didn't line up.
And you have 5 of them.
Yeah. So, we recognize the challenge.
Yeah.
The reliance factor of this being out for a while and families planning and committing, you know, economic resources behind those dates.
Yeah, I
think
just
is-
don't think
yeah.
it's the right thing to do.
I agree with that, so as much as we can support our staff as we can and, you know, get through this year and think of some other way, you know, delaying it a bit or having some informal conversations within the DIRG about what their plans are, you know, moving forward.
Kevin, was there a change to the February break?
Nope.
I didn't think so, okay.
Yeah, there was an email sent out, it was confusing too.
Yeah,
So
that threw me
The
off.
February break is in place, it's President's Week, and there was never a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and I think just, you know, the calendar questions, you know, we try to set these calendar up and then have them repeat year to year because, you know, again, there's just a range of considerations and constituencies and you're never gonna get everybody, you know, so we're one of the few districts that has a full week off in February. You know,
Yep.
lots of districts don't do that, they just take that long
Long
weekend.
weekend.
And so, you know, again, so there's never this true unanimity across, you know, not in the DIRG, not across Fairfield County, not across the state.
So the previous decision calendar that's already
Yeah,
been
it's-
approved will just hold.
That's my recommendation.
Yes, okay. Comments from the public. Are there any comments from the public? Sure. Yeah. Sure. Whatever you prefer, just your name and address.
McKay, 87 Ocean Highway. My comments about the meeting, thank you for all the work that's done, I know it's a lot. I hope the email going out to parents tomorrow goes out in the morning and not as kids are getting off the bus, and tomorrow's a Friday, and it's also the Friday before the last week of school. And I believe this is the first communication to parents about the reading, so I think it's a really important email. It should come out in the morning and not at the end of the day. I also think part of the communication would be to update the website, because all the current changes, I've had to piece together the different changes in the math and the reading program from reading the budget and emails with Trudy and Karen. I have to say I'm a little shocked that reading for kindergarten won't change for 2 years from now. Per the article that Chuck sent me last month, it mentions how kindergarten is arguably the most important, like good first instruction and early intervention in kindergarten and first grade is more effective than in later years. So putting off the new program for kindergarten for 2 full years worries me. I know from piecing together this schedule that this year the kindergarten teachers implemented the new Teachers College writing and reading units, and they also did 1 unit of illustrative math, so they can implement it next year. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility of asking the teachers if they're willing to do that as well next year, so that it's not a 2-year gap. The DIBELS, my understanding is that we're using it in full implementation for the first time next year. And I would love to have more information on the assessments and what that information means. And then also we'll need to track who got what program at what time, and according to the DIBELS information to see the changes, the 3 years that Karen mentioned. Because over time, we'll see the impact of the programs. So those are just my immediate thoughts on learning the new implementation plan. Although I am sad my daughter in kindergarten will only get 1 module next year. So, thank you.
Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, meeting adjourned at 8:39. And again, happy summer. I didn't know, did Heather, was she still on?
She just signed off.
Okay.